You're listening to the Startup Soirée Podcast, episode number 15. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Startup Soirée Podcast. This is your host, Patrick Reif. I hope you are ready for another incredible week. Today on the podcast, we have a gentleman whose name is Joe Norman. Joe is from a company here in Baltimore called Rehabs. I think you probably might be able to garner a little bit about what he works on a regular basis. But before I bludgeon it too much, I'm actually just going to welcome him and let him tell us a little bit about his company himself. So, Joe, welcome to the Startup Soirée Podcast. Thank you for being a guest.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Patrick. I'm excited about it. I've been enjoying this show every week, listening to it. So I'm happy to be part of it.
Thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate you listening. If you don't mind, just from the beginning, why don't you give our listeners a little bit of a snapshot about Joe and Rock's Rehabs?
Yeah. So I grew up, was born and raised in North Hartford. So my folks are from the Parkville, Glen Arm area. And let's see here. Man, I feel like I'm blanking on this. All right, so Rock's Rehabs. What I do is buy property, buy distressed real estate, fix it up, and resell it. It's really pretty simple. There's a lot more to it, of course, than that, but that is the short answer.
Hey, man. Sometimes you don't need to dress it up too much if it's pretty straightforward. And I have a million questions always to jump from. So just out of curiosity's sake, there'll be some primer questions. But is there a specific area that you focus on flipping properties?
Yeah, I really like the northeast part of Baltimore City. So like the Hamilton, Lauraville, Parkville area.
Yeah, that's where I live.
Oh, right on.
I live on Gibbons. I live in Hamilton Hills. There's like a ton of flips happening in that area.
Yeah, it's a popular area for people that do what I do. The reason I personally focus up there is there's a lot of demand from first-time home buyers or young families that want to stay in the city but want to have a larger house with a decent yard for their kids and dogs and that kind of thing.
Yeah, totally.
Probably why you ended up there.
It's my exact story. I mean, I think that probably trends a little closer to what my wife had in mind. I am a musician and an art maker, and had been living in apartments, she and I, for a long time previous to, and I'd always just kind of kept studios in different places, and was getting to the place where I wanted to be able to work until 2 a.m. and then just go to bed. And so that's what was attractive about it to me was more space so I could have a home studio. But
yeah, man, that's great. And there's a lot of distressed property in that area too. So there's a lot of houses that I can buy on the cheap and turn into really, really nice homes for people. And
That's awesome. I'm actually just coming into having to do some things like that with some assets that my family owns. So we'll have to have a conversation sometime. Maybe you can lend me some advice.
Yeah, absolutely. I love real estate and I love Baltimore. So that's certainly I can talk your ear off about it.
So how did how did the company come to be?
Well, I've always wanted to own my own business. It's something that I really knew from an early age, maybe 12 or 13, that I didn't want to work for someone else. But I didn't know what exactly it was that I wanted to do either. I didn't have a great idea. I didn't have any startup capital as a young man. So I got an education and got a job, and haven't enjoyed it didn't enjoy the last 10 years or so of working for other people. So about 3 years ago, my wife and I were watching a lot of those home HGTV shows about flipping houses, and I just kind of thought to myself that I had the skill set to do that. I've always enjoyed building things and construction, home improvements, and we kind of went for it. We were underwater in our house and wanted to move, but didn't have the money to do it. So we thought that maybe that would be a good way to either make some money to get out of our house to pay down that mortgage, or lose a lot of money. But we went for it, and it worked out. And worked out, and I realized that it was something I could really turn into a successful business.
So I would imagine, on these questions that you sent over to me, I see you mentioned that your father was a small business owner, and that had a really big impact on you, and it taught you how to work hard. So I can see that. He was he's a tire shop owner, which isn't necessarily like building an app. It's a lot more. It's a lot more dirt under the fingernails kind of job. So I would imagine that had a lot to do with shaping your ability to commit yourself to, a tough job. Being a rehabber isn't an easy business to start out. Like, it's a very physical and physically demanding thing to do. I'm curious if you feel like your whatever, I guess the influence of your dad had a lot to do with also knowing that you could succeed in that space.
Yeah, I didn't know that I could succeed, but I knew that I had to try it. But my father was a very big influence on me, both directly and indirectly. Just setting an example of someone who works hard, um, treats people right, and isn't afraid to roll up his sleeves and get things done when they need to get done. So he certainly was a big influence on me, and the the way that I saw him go about his business, and the way that people in town appreciated him and respected him for that is something that I always wanted to emulate, and I'm really happy that I've found a way to do that with the rehabbing business.
That's awesome. So how about your siblings? Is that passion present in them as well, or is it something that you happen to?
Yeah, I think it's there for both of them as well. I've got a brother and a sister, and they currently don't own businesses, but they are always working hard and always doing what they have to do to improve themselves and just to get better. So they are definitely, they got the hardworking, driving ahead influence from our parents like I did. I could certainly see both of them owning their own businesses one day, although currently they don't.
So I am a little interested to hear about about studying physics at Salisbury and electrical engineering at Johns Hopkins, and how you ended up where you are.
Well, let's see here. When I went to college, I knew I needed to. Well, it was important to my folks that I go to college and get an education, and I just didn't know what I wanted to do. So I picked something that seemed like it would be hard, I guess, and it was. But I also didn't have a lot of competition. There was not a lot of competition out there for physicists and electrical engineers. There's a demand for it, but not there's not a lot of people with those kind of credentials. So because of that, I found it fairly easy to find a job and a decent paying job. That's kind of what drove me down that path, frankly, was just thinking about what was going to be an employable degree, and knowing that working for someone else wasn't going to be. I knew that I was not going to enjoy what I was doing. I kind of went in with that mindset already, so I just went for how I could make some money, make the most money, until I did figure out what I enjoyed doing.
So what is your definition of hard work?
Oh man, so it doesn't have to be physical hard work. I don't pick up a hammer on my rehab projects anymore because I have too many of them going. But and it's just not an efficient use of my time. So it doesn't necessarily have to be that dirt under the fingernails kind of hard work that you mentioned earlier. But for me personally, it's just doing what I have to do to get the job done. And if that means nights and weekends, then so be it. And if it means that I can get the stuff done, and if I can keep my business running and profitable and growing, and do that on 4 hours a day, then that's it. So for me, hard work is just doing what you have to do. It doesn't matter if you break a sweat or you're working 20 hours a day. You don't have to work 20 hours a day and be getting dirt under the fingernails in order to work hard in my book. It's just accomplishing the tasks at hand.
So how about a role model?
Role models. Well, certainly my father, who played a big influence in my life. I have a couple of informal mentors around town that have been in this business for a while. So I certainly look up to them. I never really didn't. I haven't really. I can't say that there's any one person that I really try to emulate. I just try to pick up what I see as the best traits in other people, and kind of go with it, try and mold it into my own thing, I guess.
So I'm curious if you have any daily routines or things that you do on a regular basis that you consider either part of your success or just something that is really important to you in terms of balancing yourself.
Yeah. So my daily routine, I do have a daily routine that I stick to, and it's the only way that I can keep everything, that's all of the different tasks and projects, and both for my business, when I had a job, my family, stuff I have to do around the house. There was just too much for me to keep in my head. So my daily routine involves going through my email. I keep my inbox at 0 religiously. That doesn't mean that I respond to every email right away, but I will either respond to the email or put it in my system to take care of later. But the inbox gets to 0. I've got a physical inbox sitting on my desk where my mail goes or anything that I need to take action on. That gets cleared out every morning. Going through my voicemails, my calendar, any place where there's something that I might need to respond to, or somebody might be expecting a response from me, or that I have to take an action on. All of those places where those things collect, I just get them into my system, which is on my computer. I use a program called OmniFocus, which I'm in love with. and then from there, once I know that all of my to-do stuff is in there, then I can comb through it and identify just what tasks I'm going to hit that day. So that's what really keeps me focused and balanced, and just getting everything out of my head. I've found has been a way to just hugely improve my outlook and how I go about my day.
So where do you get your information?
I'm sorry, my information for what? I'm not following that question.
Do you read?
Gotcha.
Do you read books? Do you read websites? Do you have like an RSS feed aggregator? What is your habit for getting information?
Gotcha. Definitely reading the news. I'm a news junkie. So the Baltimore Business Journal, the Daily Record, the Baltimore Sun are 3 papers that I read every day. Not cover to cover, but I certainly skim them and read a few articles. For national news, I kind of stick with CNN, and they don't. I stick with CNN to kind of get the highlights of what's going on in the world, and then if I feel the need to dig into a particular story or issue, then just go to the Google and see what comes up. But that's my primary source of information. I also listen to a lot of podcasts. Marketplace is one of my favorites. The World Next Week is a really good one. Startup Soirée, of course. From Scratch is a podcast that I love. And actually, your podcast, Startup Soirée, reminds me of a very much of From Scratch. So I don't read a lot of nonfiction. I don't read a lot of fiction or any fiction, really. I usually will read 2 or 3 nonfiction books a year, but I'm not a big pick up a book and read it kind of guy.
I used to be a pretty voracious consumer of books and magazines and all that kind of stuff, and I've definitely went and I studied art history really late in my 20s. I didn't go to school traditionally, and the reading for it was definitely incredibly thorough, and it was great. I really enjoyed it. But when I came back out of that program, I had definitely lost my interest in reading kind of fiction in general and long form stuff, and I always am beating myself up about it and not reading anymore. But when I think about it, I probably read 3 times as much as I used to. I just do it in a very different way than I used to, and I read it from different sources, and it's just different kind of content in general. It's just a lot more focused now. I don't take a lot of time for I don't take a lot of time for fiction these days.
Yeah, it's hard to find time.
It's hard to, to be quite frank, it's hard to care. Like I just don't care anymore about. I guess I just don't find it fascinating anymore for whatever reason. I'm just more interested in practical representations of life, and not so much interested in stories that don't exist.
Yeah,
don't
I
know.
hear you 100%, man. That's
Maybe it's that I find everyone's personal stories to be so much more interesting, and I get to hear them on such a regular basis that fiction is less exciting, because on a day-to-day basis I meet so many people and they have such fascinating things to say themselves, and all of that is real, So I don't know.
That's a really cool way of thinking about it.
My chance to get
I
heavy.
gotta say I agree with you. I'm not very good at putting my thoughts into words sometimes, as you're probably picking up on. But that's just a really good way of putting it.
So I see here that you have a wife and 3 boys. You seem to be pretty proud of. I'm curious if you have any wisdom to kick in terms of how they motivate you, and where your children tie into your pursuits as an entrepreneur, and trying to create a different place forward than maybe the traditional one.
Yeah, absolutely. My kids are just about everything I do in life, I do with them in mind, and every decision I make with them in mind. One of the reasons I've always wanted my own business is so that I could show them what hard work looks like, the way that my father showed me. My pop had me changing tires at a really young age, and I hated it then, but I appreciate it now. I don't think I will have them working quite as hard as my pop had me working, but for them to have the ability to have a summer job and learn skills at that job, not just flipping burgers in McDonald's, but swinging a hammer, putting up drywall, learning those kind of skills. That's very important to me. And that's more future though, because they're younger. As far as right now goes, it's being able to. My oldest is going to kindergarten next year in the fall, and I really want to. I will be able to put him on the bus every day, and get him off the bus every day. Being flexible with my schedule, to be available for them is another big reason why I wanted to own a business, but not necessarily a brick and mortar store that has to be open set hours.
Sure. For me, I have 2 children as well. I have a year and a half and a 3.5-year-old, and my partner Nick at Pixelated also has 2 boys who are basically the same age as mine, and we're very, very focused on being really present fathers, and really, really trying to be there for them as much as possible. And it's like a gift and a curse to be your own boss in those situations, because it's great that you can choose to make those compromises, but sometimes it's also awful that you can choose to make those compromises, because like if you were just going to a job, you wouldn't be able to do that. And sometimes it's hard to kind of like take that attention away from something that's really important, like the growth of your business, or maybe like a big opportunity or a meeting or something that you want to do. And you have to, you always have to balance it out and figure out how to make it happen. But at the end of the day, it's a very unique position to be in, and one that I'm definitely very grateful for on a regular basis, because I definitely, I want to put all of my energy into these boys, and mostly in years 0 to 5 or 6, because after that point in time, I lose so much, purchase on them when they go into school in a more complete way, and they start to grow and be influenced more and more by their peers, and Dad will get not so awesome. I fear. Well,
Yeah.
Joseph, I'm sorry. Go ahead. No, go, please.
Oh man, I was just going to follow up on that a little bit.
Do it.
In that it is tough to have to make those choices sometimes, where Daddy can't play with you right now. I got to work. But what my wife and I really try hard to do is help them see the reason why I'm working, and help them see the benefits of it. So when they're really young, just like, Daddy works hard so that we have food and so that we have a house. And, there's some people whose daddies don't work very hard and they go hungry, helping them see it that way. But and also involving them in the work. So when I go to look at houses, I try to always, well, not always, but regularly bring my boys along so that they can so that they can see the houses and see what I do and see the before and after, and maybe get a better appreciation for what I'm doing when I do have to leave the house. Um, just trying to involve them in that way has really helped us a lot to explain to them why.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to something that I've always I'm very envious of my business partner Nick. He definitely comes from a family of entrepreneurs, and he'll tell you, I've known from the time I was a kid that I was going to have my own company, that I wasn't going to work for anyone. And in a weird way, I think that was subtly the case for me. My grandfather was definitely the same person. Albeit he didn't build big companies. He just was always working for himself and making sure to provide for himself. But he never told me that. He never said you should work for yourself. Like, I never thought about it. It wasn't until I was in business and I kind of looked back that I realized that I had subtly been kind of groomed to be able to see the advantage of it. But he never said you should do this, you shouldn't do that, or even I do this so I don't have to do that. So it was kind of weird, but what I really want to do is I really want my children to benefit from the education that I'm experiencing as an adult while they're young. I really want them to be able to think for themselves and evaluate what going to get a job is versus going and starting your own thing is worth, so that way they can make educated decisions for themselves about what's important.
Yeah, absolutely. Getting a college degree and a 9-to-5 is certainly not the only way to not the only way to go about life, and a lot of people think it is.
Yeah, well, it sure as fuck isn't. As things move forward and forward and forward, there are definitely very legitimate alternatives. It's just going to be now that I think they're going to be acceptable alternatives to other people who think that there's only one trajectory that's really acceptable.
Yeah, it's things are changing rapidly, for sure. It'd be really interesting to see what having a job looks like for my kids when they're in their 20s.
Sure, or what the conversation is going to be like about spending $50,000 or $100,000 to go get a degree at a university is going to look like in 15 more years. I have a feeling that the conversation is going to be uniquely different than it is right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a really good thought. How important is that college going to be? And I'm saving for their college now, but I certainly wouldn't mind not spending all that money on a college degree if it's not the right way to go, not the right thing for my kids.
And I'm probably off on some of my facts on this, but I know that the Five Guys, the burger joint, I know that it or so the story goes, that it started with the two oldest brothers, who their dad had saved money for them to go to college or whatever, and they came to him and said, "We don't want to go to college. We want to open a store. We want to start a business instead." And he was like, "Okay, we can do that, but I'm your business partner." And that's how Five Guys started. And they based it off of Thrashers on the boardwalk in Ocean City. They wanted to have a massively small product line that was served with crazy consistency, so that way it created these super passionate fans. And they started with one store in Northern Virginia. And I think the company was around for 10 or 11 years before, and over those 11 years, I think they opened up 2 or 3 Five Guys, but all regionally located. And, they ran that business for a decade before they got the model in place and decided that they wanted to scale it. And again, some of those facts might be a little bit off, but that's, the ultimate, story there was that they, that the dude saved money for his kids, and when they came and said we don't want to go to college, we want to use this money to start our own company, he was like, "All right, I'm on board as long as you let me help you vet it." Yeah. And I took a lot of inspiration from that story, and I've told it again a few times. I should go and reread it since I tell it so frequently, so I can make sure that I'm actually telling it accurately. But
I'm going to Wikipedia as soon as we get done with this.
Joe, this has been a great conversation. I really appreciate you lending me a little bit of your time this morning. I think that you are going to offer a really cool perspective that is very different from any of the guests that we've had on so far. So thank you for that. Thank you for lending us your time. Just before we go, let everyone out there in the world know where to reach you and how and why, and then we'll make sure to get it translated into the show notes so that way it's in print as well.
Okay. Yeah. My email address is joe@rocksrehabs.com, and that's certainly the best way to get in touch with me. And if anybody is interested in real estate, rehabbing, investing, anything, I really love this business and that kind of aspect of our lives. So drop me a line. I can talk about real estate all day.
That's awesome. I'm gonna predicate it on this and say that let's set another podcast recording with you sometime in June or July, and maybe we can dig down and talk about like passive income or investing and finding the right rehabber to be your investment partner, or kind of dig down into that portion of it, because I know that most people that are entrepreneurs and starting their own thing are, at least in some regard, cognizant of passive income and real estate. And I think that I think that you probably have a lot of insight to a lot of interesting questions a lot of people would have. So
yeah, I'd love to do that. I can talk about real estate a lot better than I can talk about myself.
Awesome. So next episode with Joe will be real estate asset building.
Very cool.
All right, brother. Well, hey, have a tremendous weekend, and I'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good. Looking forward to the 30th and seeing you at the next Startup Soirée.
Awesome. All right, Joe.
Cool.
Peace.